We've got a lot of breaking news coming to you today out of Canada from us here at the Zone Media Network. I'm Griffin, your host, including bombshell developments out of Washington as President Trump puts Canada on notice over its vast water supply. We're also going to follow the reaction north of the border, where Mark Carney's government is scrambling to explain its refusal and facing sharp criticism from within Canada's own farm and energy sectors. And across the world, Trump's move is being seen as a bold play, proving once again that America is willing to lead while Canada gets caught flat-footed again. All right, let's get into it.
The deadly and devastating wildfires in Los Angeles are drawing new attention to U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's comments about one of Canada's most valued natural resources.
We have millions of gallons of water pouring down from the north with the snow caps in Canada and all pouring down. And they have essentially a very large faucet.
So President-elect Donald Trump says water from Canada could be diverted to California to reduce water shortages. Now, this is raising concerns over how Canada is protecting currently its water supply. For more this morning, we are joined from Calgary by Tricia Stadnik. She's the Canada Research Chair in Hydrologic Modeling at the University of Calgary. Thanks for joining us so early this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
All right, experts say they think Donald Trump is talking about the Columbia River. So just to give everybody a reference point here, the 2,000-kilometer-long river starts in BC. It then flows through Washington and Oregon before it ends up in the Pacific Ocean, where is this very large faucet that Trump is referring to, and who controls it?
Yeah, so actually there is no faucet at the moment. What he's referring to is the fact that the power of the river, the water in the river, could be harnessed before it reaches the Pacific Ocean. He would do that within American territory, not within Canadian territory. And he's talking about building, which doesn't exist currently, a diversion pipeline to take the water to the drier parts of California.
He has described it as essentially, Canada's letting this water just rush right into the ocean. That actually isn't true. It's used by U.S. industries like fishery, farming, hydroelectricity. U.S. interest in Canada's waters, we know, is not new. All the way back in 2008, there was a report, and it called on then Prime Minister Stephen Harper's government to do more to protect our water. I remember Prime Minister Harper talking about water rights back then. So why is the U.S. so interested again in our water?
Honestly, it's about developing the American economy. And this means investing in growth, both for population in terms of water supply, but also in terms of critical industries such as Silicon Valley. It takes water to run those supercomputers as well as agriculture. And we have more of it than we can use just by sheer population ratios between Canada and the US. And he's looking at it as an opportunity.
Yeah, you heard that right. Donald Trump has never been exactly shy about putting America's interests first, and this week he proved it again, standing before cameras in Washington. He made a demand that sent shockwaves through Ottawa. Canada must open the tap on its water. Trump pointed directly to the Great Lakes, to cross-border rivers, and even to Canada's vast northern reserves, calling them the most underutilized resource on the continent. But more than that, he framed it as a matter of national security. America's industries, farms, and cities need guaranteed water supplies, and Washington is no longer willing to sit back while Canada hoards what the world desperately needs. The message was unmistakable and unpleasant to Ottawa. For decades, water has been treated like an untouchable subject, something off limits even in trade talks. Trump just shattered that in one stroke. He called Canada a very large faucet. A faucet that he said could either flow with the United States as a partner or stay locked up and risk being bypassed entirely.
British Columbia announced that the U.S. government has paused negotiations on the expansive Columbia River Treaty, saying the current administration is reviewing its international engagements. Now, the treaty is decades old. It regulates a number of ways in which the Columbia River is used, including flood control, power generation, and water supply. The river's headwaters are in British Columbia, but it flows into the state of Washington as well as Oregon. Last July, in an in-principle deal on an updated version of that treaty, they were reached by Canada and the United States, but it was not finalized before Donald Trump took office. In a recent phone call with the former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Trump called the treaty unfair to the United States. Okay, so that is a lot to take in. Why don't we break down that very latest thing that we talked about? Joining us now to better understand what's going on with the water treaties between Canada and the United States is Tricia Stadnik. She's a professor and Canada Research Chair in hydrologic modeling with the University of Calgary's Schulich School of Engineering and Department of Geography. Oh my gosh, that's a lot too. Professor, thank you so much for making time for us today.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
So there's so much to unpack when it comes to Canada and the Americans and our relationship around water, but let's begin with the Columbia Water Treaty. What's going on here? What's gone wrong here?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's suffering from bad timing in a way. The treaty was reopened for negotiations in 2018, actually, during the last Trump administration. And negotiations have been ongoing ever since. In mid-2024, the negotiators reached an agreement, and it took until about December of 2024 to fully agree on the exact terms and nature that were going to be written down, which unfortunately did not leave enough time for the agreement to be ratified in Congress before the new administration took over in the U.S.
There you go, black and white. Trump reminded everybody that Washington holds the cards and Canada doesn't. Because now he's talking about the Columbia River Treaty, the critical agreement that governs hydropower and flood control between the two nations. Talks on that treaty have been frozen for months, and Trump made it clear the freeze would stay in place unless Ottawa starts listening. In other words, America can turn off the power Canada relies on just as easily as Canada can try to hold back its water.
Water, already a precious commodity, is increasingly a point of contention between Canada and the U.S. President Donald Trump has publicly mused about diverting Canada's water to the U.S.
They have essentially a very large faucet.
Trump threatened to tear up the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement and other water-sharing accords on a February phone call with then Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, the New York Times reported. The agreement is a pact between Canada and the U.S. to restore and protect the water quality and ecosystem of the 5 Great Lakes. But could Trump tear it up? Gail Kranzberg is a professor at McMaster University who has studied the Great Lakes region extensively. She says the political cost would be too high.
I don't believe our politicians on either side of the border are going to stand for that.
That's because the region, divided between 8 U.S. states and the Canadian province of Ontario, is an economic powerhouse. It contributes $8.8 billion in wages to the U.S. economy and accounts for about 35% of Canada's GDP. The Great Lakes region would be the 3rd largest economy in the world if it was its own country. The lakes and St. Lawrence Seaway are a crucial transportation corridor. The region supports a bustling tourism industry, including a multi-billion-dollar recreational and commercial fishery. Some 40 million people rely on the lakes for drinking water, and it is a major manufacturing hub.
So, you see, for Trump's base, it was classic negotiation, tough, unapologetic, and putting pressure exactly where it belongs on Canadian governments that are used to hiding behind polite diplomacy. For Carney, it set him up for something that he wasn't prepared for, because he rushed to the cameras in Ottawa trying to project confidence. He was trying to sound strong instead of really, honestly, appearing cornered and revealing just how weak his government is. Within hours, markets reacted, farmers in Ontario and across the prairies began asking why the government was leaving money on the table while Trump was openly dangling billion-dollar opportunities. Water pipelines, shipping routes, infrastructure deals, all of it could have meant jobs, growth, and investment. Yet Carney's flat refusal shut the door before the discussion even began. And then came the comparisons from experts. They reminded Canadians that Ottawa already sells its natural gas to the United States only for Washington to turn around and resell it to Europe at a massive premium. The same could happen with water. Carney's stance doesn't protect Canada. It risks leaving the country empty-handed while the U.S. finds another way forward.
President Trump thinks Canada will cave in. We will never, ever bow down to a bully. Canadians will always stick together.
And that's the real story here, folks. Carney thought he was showing leadership, but To Canadians watching from the outside, he looked like a weak leader playing checkers while Trump was playing chess. By refusing Carney, he didn't box Trump in, he boxed himself in. And the longer he digs in, the more the reality sinks in at home. Trump's announcement didn't rattle America, it energized it. Across the country, his demand was framed not as desperation, but as vision. A goal. Water security is the next frontier, and Trump's the first leader willing to tackle it head on. Industry leaders immediately voiced support. From agriculture to manufacturing, they called it a push that was strategic, a necessity. America is building, America is expanding, and America requires resources. If Canada won't step up, Trump made it very clear the United States will pursue alternatives, and fast. That message landed loudest in the border states. Governors in the Midwest and the Great Lakes region praised Trump up and down, finally putting Ottawa on notice. Because you see, for years, those states have watched as Canada quietly benefited from shared water agreements while resisting any real accountability. Now the tables have turned. With Trump in charge, Washington is setting its sights on the terms that Canada has been benefiting for a long time. And now Canada is the one sweating over what happens next. In the energy sector, the signal was strong. Hydroelectric power pipelines and infrastructure corridors are all in play now. Trump's team reminded investors that America has the technology, the financing, and the political will to move forward with or without Canada's help. The shockwaves weren't about American weakness. They were about Canadian exposure. Carney's refusal created a new reality. As if he didn't have enough to deal with, he's now willed himself into another debacle. Canada, you guys, you have an idiotic leader. This is insanity to me. Like, if Canada doesn't play ball, America has the leverage and Ottawa risks being left isolated again on another sector that could have brought in money and jobs to Canada. The real political firestorm didn't erupt in Washington. It erupted in Ottawa. Carney's refusal, sold as patriotic, quickly started cracking under pressure from within his own country. Opposition leaders blasted him, saying Canada just walked away from what could have been the most profitable trade deal of the decade. Farmers demanded answers. Prairie premiers began hinting that if Ottawa can't explore a deal, they might push for provincial authority to negotiate directly, like Alberta's trying to do. Suddenly, the cracks in Canada, and I've said it before, like, at this point, it's not cracks anymore. It's just giant chasms that I don't know how Carney's going to patch over or fix, because it is visible for everybody to see. And Trump, he didn't have to lift a finger. By making the demand, he forced Canada's politicians into open warfare with each other, and to American voters, it looked like Trump had set the terms, and Carney is just stumbling again into his trap, and he knows it. Whereas in the US, the move played brilliantly. Republican lawmakers rallied behind Trump's demand, calling it common sense and long overdue. Even some Democrats admitted privately that water security is the issue no leader can afford to ignore. Governors in California, Arizona, and across the Midwest praised Trump for speaking out loud what everybody else has been whispering for years. That's Trump for you. America can't afford to let Canada keep hoarding resources. In one stroke, Trump turned a Canadian refusal into an American rallying cry. Carney thought he was standing tall. The world saw a Canadian leader isolating himself for very dumb reasons at home, while America projected strength abroad.
So you have millions of gallons of water pouring down from the north with the snow caps in Canada and all pouring down. And they have essentially a very large faucet. And you turn the faucet, and it takes one day to turn it. It's massive. It's as big as the wall of that building right there behind you. And you turn that, and all of that water goes aimlessly into the Pacific. And if they turned it back, all of that water would come right down here and right into Los Angeles. They wouldn't have to have people not use more than 30 gallons and 32 gallons. They want to do that, you know. They're trying to do that.
The standoff didn't just, stay between Washington and Ottawa. Within hours of what Trump said, the story jumped onto front pages in London, Brussels, and Beijing. World leaders were quick to weigh in, not just because they cared about Mark Carney's pride. They don't. Because they understood exactly what Trump had just done. He elevated water from a domestic policy issue to a global commodity. A fight. And he did it on America's terms. Markets responded immediately. Investors began shifting portfolios with real quick click of a button. Stocks in agriculture and water, all of it started to change in real time because it all was on the expectation that the U.S. access to new water supplies could secure future food production. And at the same time, Canadian energy and infrastructure firms saw their valuations dip. Analysts openly questioning whether Carney's refusal had just caused Canada a very big chance at locking in long-term stability. In Europe, the chatter was blunt. EU leaders, already uneasy about energy dependence after years of relying on Russia, saw the headlines. They saw the writing on the wall and recognized a pattern. First it was oil and gas, and now it's water. And once again, Trump positioned himself and America as the decisive player, while Canada is playing defense. Brussels officials even floated the idea of opening exploratory talks with Ottawa about strategic water partnerships, a polite way of saying Europe might try to bypass Washington if Carney stays stubborn. China, meanwhile, watched with quiet interest. Beijing has its own water crisis, with massive shortages threatening farms and megacities. For them, Carney's posture looked less like strength and more like opportunity. If Ottawa won't sell to Washington, then maybe we'll sell to Shanghai. And that possibility alone underscores just how dangerous Carney's refusal could become. Instead of solidifying Canada's alliance with its closest neighbor, he's risking opening the door to rival powers. Even NATO allies were unsettled. If Trump was willing to put Canada on blast over water, what would he do with countries that already lag behind on defense spending or resource cooperation? In a way, Trump's demand was bigger than just Canada. It was a warning shot to the entire alliance. America is not tiptoeing around sensitive issues. If you want to benefit from U.S. partnership, you need to contribute something real. The result was striking. Trump looked bold and uncompromising, and once again shifting the center of gravity back towards Washington. Canada, on the other hand, looked isolated country sitting on a mountain of resources, but too timid, too divided, and led by terrible leadership to do anything, and not leveraging it effectively at all. Like what was meant to be Carney's show of sovereignty and independence morphed into a display of weakness. This guy just can't win no matter what he does. And in geopolitics, weakness never goes unnoticed. In the hours after Trump's demand, Carney tried to reframe the narrative. His office put out a statement saying, insisting Canada would protect its sovereignty, that water isn't just a resource, but a part of the national identity. Well, advisors floated the idea of new legislation to lock in federal control over fresh water, stripping provinces of any power to negotiate. On paper, it looks like Ottawa is asserting its leverage. In reality, it revealed just how defensive Canada is becoming. Because here's the hard truth. The moment Carney slammed the door, the conversation did not end. He doesn't have that power. It simply shifted beyond his control. Prairie premiers began talking openly about autonomy, pointing out that it's their land, their rivers, and their farmers. Who could very well benefit from a cross-border deal? Legal experts chimed in. Nothing under Canada's constitution. Like, Ottawa's jurisdiction isn't as airtight as Carney pretends. And suddenly what was supposed to be a clean refusal is starting to look like the beginning of another messy constitutional fight at home.
Concerned that Trump could be coming for Canadian water after halting negotiations on the Columbia River Treaty renewal. However, BC's Minister of Energy and Climate Solutions dismisses that idea. Adrian Dix says it's regular practice for a new administration to do a broad review of its international engagement. The Biden administration did the same thing. In a virtual information session last night, Dix says the idea that Canada can supply water through the Treaty for American Needs is just not accurate.
Meanwhile, Trump's allies floated something even more disruptive. Direct arrangements with U.S. states bordering the Great Lakes. Ottawa wants to play hardball. Washington doesn't care. Trump doesn't care. He'll just go right around him. Governors in Michigan, Ohio, and Wisconsin, they are like, yeah, let's do it. I'll listen to this. They like the idea. It rattled Ottawa big time when they heard this because it exposed a reality Canadians don't want to hear. No doesn't make the problem go away. It just shifts the conversation into spaces Carney can't control. And that's the trap. Canada's so-called leverage is shrinking by the day. The more Carney insists on centralizing control, the more provinces rebel. The more he refuses, the more the United States explores side deals. And in the process, Canada risks being portrayed not as a proud steward of its resources, but as a dysfunctional partner unable to manage its own house. The irony is glaring. By refusing Trump outright, Carney hoped to make Canada look strong, and instead he triggered the exact opposite. An internal debate that fracturing his country even more, and is feeling provincial resentment, and leaves Washington with more negotiating power and more room to maneuver than ever. And while Ottawa debates America is moving, Trump's team has already signaled new investments in desalination, water recycling, and advanced infrastructure. The classic play: negotiate from strength while building alternatives. That way, whether Canada comes to the table or not, America wins. For Carney, the future is looking very bleak. Every move he makes now risks exposing Canada's disunity again, and while every move Trump makes reinforces the image of a decisive leader with options, with strength, with loyalty to his own nation. In global politics, the contrast is lethal. Water is the new oil. Whoever controls it in the 21st century holds the real power, not just over agriculture, but over cities, industries, and the future of entire nations. Trump understands that. He's already tying water security to national defense infrastructure and trade. He positioned America as the player that doesn't just survive shortages, it dictates the terms of survival for others. At the end of the day, Trump's message wasn't really about Canada. It was all about the future. The U.S. will secure what it needs: water, energy, trade routes, with or without Ottawa's blessing. That's not arrogance. That's survival and confidence. And in this new era, it's America that is writing the rules. And that's all that I have for you today, guys. From us here at the Zone Media Network, I'm Griffin, your host. Feel free to head on over to American Zone for all the latest American news. And please, 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 don't forget to like and subscribe. I love you all, guys. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.